Christy Worm Charles, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment. Her Excellency Marzota Wasilaski, Ambassador, Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, CARICOM, and CARIFORUM, and other members of the delegation. Didier Trebek, Resident Coordinator, Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, who will be joining us via social media platform, and other personnel of the United Nations. Elaine Henry McQueen, Program Coordinator, Grenada Spotlight Initiative. Wendy Freeman, Resident British Commissioner, British High Commission. Dominique Lovell, Crown Counsel, Ministry of Legal Affairs. Other specially invited guests, senior government officials, and members of civil society. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, viewers and listeners in virtual space, good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to this celebration, a celebration of life, a celebration of love, a celebration that acknowledges our pursuits as a society as we address the challenge of violence against women. 16 days of activism, 16 days as we continue a process that has already begun, 16 days as we acknowledge that our women, that we as a scourge in society that needs to be addressed. This evening's exercise, it forms part of a collaboration that's put on by the Spotlight Grenada Initiative. The theme of this evening's exercise, the 16 Days of Activism, it has been adopted from the unit campaign, Orange the World, End Violence Against Women, and by extension, girls. As I've intimated to you, this is in fact a celebration, and certainly we say thanks to those of you that's here. We understand that you've taken from your busy schedule. The event, the 16 Days of Activism, starts today and will proceed over the next 16 days and will end on the 10th of December, Human Rights Day. Good afternoon to you. My name is Joseph Kador, and welcome, as I said, to this evening's celebration. To put things in context, I'm going to welcome to do the opening prayer, and he will be joining us virtually. Vonnie James, and by the way of information, I would invite you to stand and remain standing because the prayer will be followed directly after by the national anthem that will be performed on steel pan by Miss Anisha Howard Johnson. I invite you to stand and join me for the prayer to be done by Vonnie James.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much all. Good afternoon, Grenada carriacou Matnik. And we stand together, and wherever you are, let's begin with a word of prayer. In the name of God, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we pray. Lord, at this time, we take a moment to say thank you, Lord. Thank you for the government and people of Grenada. Thank you, Lord, for the Spotlight Initiative. Thank you, Lord, for those who have been working behind the scenes to put this time together to serve in this ministry of social development to help our women and girls. In the name of God, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we pray, O God, for all our social workers, for all our human services operators, God. We pray in a special way, Lord, for the Ministry of Social Development, even as it continues to work to scourge this issue, this disease of abuse of women and girls in our island. We pray now, God, that in the name of Jesus, that this session will be a success. We pray, oh God, that it will be a celebration of where we have arrived thus far. We ask, oh God, that the monies invested will be well spent, continue to help and bring hope to the lives of those affected by domestic violence, gender-based violence, intimate partner violence. And so now, God, into your hands we commend, oh Lord, this session to you. We thank you, Lord, for all those who have input in it. We thank you, Lord, for the EU and the UN and all those organizations who have given funding. We pray in a special way for Ms. McQueen, Lord, Ellen McQueen Henry, Lord, even as she continue to coordinate this program. And we ask, oh God, that through your spirit, that lives will be saved and there'll be hope coming out of this program. Through your name we ask in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Thank you very much.
For the rendition of the national anthem that would be performed via steel pan by Miss Anisha Howard Johnson. Thank you. Please be seated. Again, allow me to invite you to this evening's celebration, but before we proceed in what is a packed schedule for you, allow me to also acknowledge the presence of our Minister of Social Development, Minister Delmo Thomas. Minister, thank you for being here. As intimated, this evening it's a celebration. We celebrate women, we celebrate who we are as a people. If at any time we forsake our women in society, we may as well say, well, we've forgotten our rights and reason for being alive. So there is entertainment, it's a celebration. Certainly there's a few number of speeches, and we'll get straight into this evening's proceeding. I'm now going to invite, and he will be joining us virtually, Mr. Didier Trebek. He's a resident coordinator for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, to share some remarks.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon. Honorable Delma Thomas, Minister of Social Development, Ms. Chrissy Wamchar, Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Social Development, Ambassador Gosha Vasilenska, Ambassador of the EU in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean State, and CARICOM CARIFORUM, and her member of the delegations, member of the diplomatic corps, and other representative of the government, my colleague, Elaine Henry McQueen, coordinator of the Grenada Spotlight Initiative in Grenada, and members of civil society organizations and women movement. Good afternoon again. It's of course truly a pleasure to join you, and sorry for not being able to be there in presence with you all in today's event, but I could not at least join you virtually for sure to celebrate all the results achieved with the Spotlight Initiative, thanks to the many partners that are present today, and thanks to the government of Grenada. And as you mentioned, Master of Ceremony, this day is of course of particular significance. We joined activists, individuals, organizations around the globe, and women and girls everywhere to start this period of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence to, in a way, orange the world. And this really serves to place the spotlight on this other pandemic, often referred as shadow pandemic, during this COVID time, the one of gender-based violence, and to support the government and the CSOs here in Grenada in your efforts to really take definitive steps to make a difference. And if we look at some of the figures, according to a recent report, violence against women and girls affect at least 1/3 of them in the Caribbean. And 3 of the top 10 recorded rates in the world actually occur in the Caribbean. We have also conducted several prevalence surveys, especially CDB working with UN Women, and the results show that violence against women in this region, through those 5 prevalence surveys conducted in 5 countries, including Grenada, this violence is really endemic. 46% of women have experienced at least one form of violence over their lifetime, and this rate was 39% in Grenada. More than 1 in every 4 partnered women have experienced physical, intimate partner violence in their lifetime. If we add to these numbers the impact of what has been the shadow gender-based violence pandemic during COVID or behind COVID, we have, of course, many reasons to be concerned. But behind those figures, there are lives that are destroyed, there are potentials of women and girls that are reduced to little, and sometimes there is a loss of hope, something that we cannot let happen, of course. And this is why we're gathering here today, to step up against this course of violence, to unite and to fight this battle together, because this is really a battle. So I wish really to thank the European Union and yourself, Ambassador, for the outstanding partnerships worldwide between the EU and the UN with the Spotlight Initiative, and specifically in Grenada, where it's implemented in the Eastern Caribbean, in addition to 5 other countries in the Caribbean, and a regional program that covers the region with an overall investment of $60 million. I also wish to express special congratulations to the government of Grenada, represented here by Minister Delma Thomas, for the continued leadership in addressing gender-based violence. At the national level, thanks to this joint UN program, we have witnessed, I must say, a most comprehensive, articulated approach, combining protection of women and girls with defense of human rights, and the use of a whole of government and whole society approach. So this is extremely encouraging. The Grenada Spotlight takes, I would say, the UN reform beyond a concept of one UN to very practical application. There is a range of 4 UN agencies, namely UN Women, UNICEF, UNDP, and PAHO WHO, each bringing their unique strength and specific expertise to meet Grenada's needs. Additionally, the National Gender Machinery, the Women's Organization, and other civil society organizations are being strengthened to lead the cause, thereby ensuring sustainability and national ownership of the work being done. You know that this initiative was launched, and I remember, just before COVID started in March 2020, just before COVID was declared a pandemic. And of course, the implementation was fraught with some difficulties and delays. And meanwhile, the prevalence and intensity of violence against women and girls worsened in the world, and of course in the Caribbean as the pandemic raged as a result of lockdown or school closures, for example. But almost 2 years later, notable successes have been recorded, including an improvement in service deliveries to victim survivors, an enhancement of government regulatory frameworks that were already pretty well advanced, I must say, in Grenada. An ability also to have more gender disaggregated data. This is a critical element to be able to make very well-informed decisions. And of course, empowering civil society and women's movement to lead the cause, as I just mentioned. And over the past year, thanks to the collaborative efforts between government and the Spotlight program, we have seen that the conditions of the CEDAR's home for abused women and children were significantly improved to ensure the health and well-being of residents, particularly during the pandemic. Isolation rooms, first aid supplies, and other equipments were made available for women who fell ill, and areas including bathroom and recreational areas were also upgraded. Progress made possible in the fight of GBV in Grenada was also occurring because of the important degree of ownership by the government of Grenada, and I must say at the highest level, starting with the Prime Minister himself leading this agenda. We have seen, for example, the Cabinet's approval of SOPs guiding the treatment of GBV in the whole nation of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique as an illustration, but also for the first time, it's expected that a gender-responsive budgeting would have been included in the preparation of Grenada's national budget. And this is going to be, in our view, very central to addressing gender inequalities and applying concretely the leaving no one behind principle. So through you, Minister Delma Thomas and PS Juan Charles, I really wish to commend the government of Grenada for all the progress made so far. I also wish to commend the 4 UN agencies for their immense support to Grenada, as well as my colleague, Helene Henry McQueen, and her team of the Spotlight Program Coordination Unit for your outstanding work done so far, I must say, as well as, of course, all civil society partners for their commitment and determination. So today, let's celebrate our success achieved so far, but let us not forget that as we speak during this event, more girls and women are or will be abused. So wishing you a very good event, and this is just the start of 16 very important days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trebek, and certainly it is the start, and I would like to see it as the start, as the beginning of the rest of our lives. Today is the genesis of one, the exodus of one, that is, our culture, our way of life, the things that we seemingly accept as the norm, as part of our society. And today we come together and we embrace change open-heartedly. I would like to invite now Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the delegation of the European Union of Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS and Caribbean, CARICOM and CARIFOR Forum to share some remarks.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies, for this kind introduction. And as a person with an exceptionally difficult Polish name, may I suggest, all protocols observed, if you allow me, I'd like to acknowledge Minister and her team, our colleagues from the UN, the Spotlight team, members of the media, members of the civil society, my British colleague present here, and stress that UK is also a contributor to Spotlight. This happened before recent times, if you like. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am extremely happy that my first country official visit after the long hiatus imposed by the COVID pandemic is taking place in this beautiful country, Grenada. And what makes this visit even more stimulating is this important event to mark the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. In that regard, let me warmly thank the Spotlight Initiative Program Coordination and Implementation Unit for organizing today's celebration. The results of the Spotlight Initiative Grenada program to date are promising, and we will hear more on this later from the implementers. I very much welcome the progress made despite the COVID pandemic, and I believe it is important to celebrate the positive achievements, but at the same time, we should remain sensitive to the harsh reality. Certainly, we have improved in terms of gender equality and women's rights in the past decades, but we are far from closing the gender gap. Unfortunately, violence against women and girls, as well as domestic violence in all its terrible scope, remains one of the most widespread and devastating human rights violations in our world today. I am sure most of us, the women present here especially, if not all, have suffered some sort of gender-based violence in our lifetime. Ending such violence should not remain a utopia, but become a reality. We cannot sit and hope for better times ahead, because they will not come if we do not act now. Let us orange the world and end violence against women now. This year's global theme for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and we have oranged this room beautifully. Today, the world commemorates a day that is historically rooted in the Caribbean. We remember the Mirabal sisters brutally assassinated in 1960 in the Dominican Republic in their struggle to rid the country from dictator Trujillo, and with them, we pay homage to all the victims of gender-based violence worldwide. We have been observing the 25th of November every year since 1999. It is also since the 90s that the international community is explicitly addressing violence against women and girls with the adoption of the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women in 1993 and the 1995 Beijing Platform for Action. Sadly, 3 decades later, global figures are still terrifying. 1 in 3 women in the world still experience or have experienced physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. More than half of the women killed every year are killed by partners or other family members. So we still very much need an awareness day to commemorate this silent epidemic and reflect how to prevent it in the future. Sadly, the Caribbean has above the global average rates of intimate partner violence, with around half of the women experiencing any kind of intimate partner violence. On top of that, data shows that the isolation imposed by the COVID pandemic has worsened the problem, making it more difficult for victims to seek help or escape abusive homes. That is why the European Union allocated 50 million euros exclusively for the Caribbean region under the Spotlight Initiative, out of a total of 500 million worldwide, of which around 1.5 million euros has been allocated only for the Grenada program. This represents an unprecedented, much-needed investment in equality, because we know that there can be no inclusive and sustainable development without gender equality and women's empowerment. Our support to the Caribbean will continue in the coming years, and we will explore innovative actions funded under different instruments and programs. Between 2000 and 2010, approximately 30 cases of rape were reported per year in Grenada, twice the global average. Provisional data from 2017 to 2020 seems very discouraging, with even higher number of cases. If that were not bad enough, the real figures would be certainly worse, since many victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence do not report to the authorities because of fear they will get, because of fear of stigma, self-blame, fear of the perpetrator, or lack of confidence that they will get any help. We also know that the vast majority such violence cases reported to the Royal Grenada Police Force is perpetrated by men against women. What is also very worrisome is that violence against women and girls is the most prevalent form of domestic violence, meaning that the place where a person should feel safer is actually the place where many women and girls are abused. And that means physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse, harassment, among others, as defined by the law in Grenada. Let us reflect a moment. Sexual harassment is normal. Women cannot deny their male partner's sex. Some women provoke men to hit them. Women must be mothers. Men must control all women in their household, and so on and so on. Haven't we heard those statements in some moments in our lives? Often too frequently. So many harmful beliefs and statements that perpetuate violence against women and girls and that are deeply rooted in our societies. Fortunately, these are not eternal, and so it is in our hands to make a change for the better, for the society in general, and for the most in need in particular. We all need to help in deconstructing those beliefs to end this violence now. If we want to improve the quality of life of our girls, we need to ensure they have a safer shelter to escape the danger. We need to help survivors gain confidence in speaking out against the abuse they are receiving. We need to ensure that education, health, justice, employment, and information and communication technology services work together and are fully effective to tackle this serious problem from all its angles. It needs an all-society approach, and we need to have those conversations that involve all of us now. That is why, through the Spotlight Initiative in Grenada, we provide support to expand access to quality responses for survivors, covering safety, shelter, health, justice, and other essential services for victims of gender-based and domestic violence. We advocate for action plans to help step up investments, mainly in prevention, because this is the most cost-effective means to break the circle of violence that prevails in our communities and prevents further victims. Child sexual abuse accounted for 32% of the 1,910 reported cases of child abuse in Grenada from 2011 to 2015, with an overwhelming majority of the victims being girls. We need to teach our children that they have the right to control their own body, that they can and they must speak out if someone touches them inappropriately. Everyone, boys and girls, should have access to this basic sexual education, and such is one of the priority areas of the Spotlight Initiative in Grenada. For the rest of us, who are lucky enough not to have gone through such devastating experience, we should not become accomplices of this abuse. We should not remain silent. If we suspect such horrendous acts, we should take action now. Undoubtedly, preventing violence will require a generation of men and boys, women and girls who believe, model and promote gender equality in order to dismantle patriarchy. The need to invest in education, behavioral change, communication, and public sensitization is clear. Among all actors involved in the initiative, faith-based organizations and religious leaders are key partners in addressing unequal power and fight against violence against women and girls. Before I finish, let me add a word of recognition for the leading role of the civil society in this endeavor of changing mindsets. Without you, the Spotlight Initiative would be shaky, because you are the best place to understand the needs of the communities and so an essential piece of the equation to define our response to these brutal violations of human rights. Let me congratulate the Ministry, the UN colleagues and the Spotlight team. Without you, the successes that we're celebrating today wouldn't have been possible. We're delighted to partner with you, but you lead this work, you deliver the results. Spotlight is now well positioned to accelerate its efforts and expand its actions, but more than ever, we need more partners, funds and action to turn the initiative into a truly global movement for change. Ensuring Spotlight's legacy and sustainability is critical. And beyond the necessity to continue telling the story at global level and mobilizing more partners, the real work needs to continue at country and community level. I'm excited to hear about your testimonies and the results you have achieved so far towards the elimination of violence against women and girls in Grenada. And Master Ceremonies, you said today, Today is a celebration of life and love. Let it also be a celebration of dignity and human rights of every woman and girl in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Continuing with the program, it is evident that while, yes, there would be support from the European Union, there will be support from government and non-governmental organizations. Ultimately, the change that we need comes from within our hearts. And as such, I'm happy that I'm seeing most of us here today. We've embraced our color, orange. As you can see, I wear mine on my heart. It's on my chest. Thank you. To continue to share with us, we Now I'm going to invite to provide the feature address this evening, the Minister with responsibility for social development, Honorable Minister Delma Thomas.
It is indeed a celebration of our women and girls, their rights and their dignity. Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, Mrs. Chrissy Wom-Charles, Her Excellency Margozata Wazilwaska, I hope I pronounce your name correctly, Ambassador, Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean states, OECS, CARICOM, and CARIFORUM, and other members of our delegation, Didier Tribec, Resident Coordinator, Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, who join us online, and Mr. Tribec has been part of us, Wendy Freeman, Resident British Commissioner of the British High Commission, Local Spotlight Initiative team, special invited guests, a pleasant good afternoon to every one of you. It is indeed an honor and privilege to be here this afternoon to join in the celebration on the implementation of activities under the Spotlight Initiative thus far. This initiative over the past year has become a household name in this tri-island state. In fact, as we deal with the global COVID-19 pandemic, the Spotlight Initiative has been very instrumental in assisting our women and girls during this difficult period. Many of its benefits have also trickled down and have changed the narratives of victims of abuse and existing legislation. The Spotlight Initiative has fostered from the onset strong political commitment, and at this juncture, I'd like to recognize our Prime Minister, who's not present here today, for his commitment in gender issues. He has pledged, together with the other members of our cabinet, to fight in the elimination against violence of our women and girls. And so I want to commend them for the support over the years and for continuing to support every initiative as we go along the way. Indeed, our ministry has pledged its support and has demonstrated to date its dedication towards the eradication of violence against women and girls. In fact, our family violence in our society. Further transformative action have been placed in our midterm agenda strategies aimed at strengthening interventions to combat domestic violence and child abuse. This has become a cabinet mandate for all ministries to work together as a whole of government approach to undertake action towards this social scourge. As we continue to celebrate the great investment by the European Union and the UN system have made towards ending violence against women and girls in Grenada, Carriacou, and Martinique, let us be reminded of our very fortunate, that we are very fortunate to be part of this very important support from the European Union. And I also want to commend the UN system, who have always been a partner. They have always provided assistance to the government and people of Grenada in ending violence against women and girls. And we thank you for your tremendous support. We thank the European Union for assisting us in this very important venture. The results of the key principle of leaving no one behind is already in evidence. For example, victims are already at the center of service delivery. Local awareness is raised on the harmful practices and norms that drives violence against women and girls. Communities are involved, engaged, and empowered to seek, design, and deliver solutions to prevent violence against women and girls. There are accesses to a broad diversity of provisions that is inclusive to all sections of people, the isolated, vulnerable, and marginalized communities. Meaningful partnerships are forged across the gender justice and women movements. Today, we also remember those women and organizations that have been broken so many barriers to create avenues for women to reach their full potential. Those who will have labored to ensure that girls and adult women can live peaceful lives, can have access to education, can refuse to marry at the age of 12, and can be in the platforms like these with freedom of speech. As we continue the discussion, I want us to reflect on those who would have died martyrs defending the rights of women and still victims of abuse and discrimination, those who are looked in with their perpetrators. Today, we remember them all. We are also hopeful that our life realities and existence as duty bearers will give others around us hope and drive to live. From since time memorial, Grenada have labored for their families. They were bearers of pain, ridicule, and many forms of violence, and they still managed to hold their family together. They easily gave meaning to the words grace, dignity, class, pride, and resilience. Truth be told, many Grenadian women and girls have been living lives that celebrate victories of triumph every single day. Our very presence represents the fact that we will not be silenced. We soar higher, we rise. And the very fact that as a government, within our parliament, you have 7 women, it speaks volume. The very fact that our Governor General is a female, and within our government system, we have many of our permanent secretaries being women, it speaks volume. And so today, as we join in celebrating, as we join in working hard together to end all forms of violence against our women and girls, I want to applaud not only the Spotlight team, but the team within the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, who have been working very hard, even during the COVID crisis. Even when they should be at home with their loved ones, they have been working, saving women, saving girls from the act of violence. And to them, I want to applaud your hard work and dedication. You are true heroes, and for that, you will go down in the history of our country. In the midst of this resilience, the prevalence of lifetime physical, sexual, and other emotional and economic intimate partner violence is staggering. No person should have to endure such atrocities. And so, it is imperative that strong and effective systems are built to garner against abuse, wherein effective pathways are strengthened to deliver optimal services that are people-centered within a right-based approach. So today, in this space, at this place, let us be reminded that within the trust of 16 days of activism, that we are strong, we are capable, and deserving of the respect. We are more than our appearances. I want us to remind each other of our strength, leadership, courage, and so much more as women and as girls. We need to encourage our girls to speak out and assert themselves, counter narratives and language that discourage them to do so. Show them their thoughts matter, by asking their opinions and listening when they speak. Show girls the possibilities of their potential. The success of every woman should be the inspiration to another. We should raise each other up. Lest we shall never forget that women have been the cornerstone of our families, strengths of our communities, and pillar of this beautiful country. I was surrounded by extraordinary women in my lifetime. As I have said time and time again, I grew up with my grandmother, and so they have been pillar in my life, and so they have influenced who I am today. And for that, with every other women we meet across our tri-island state with similar stories of women raising them up. And so we have to applaud our women, and we have to continue to motivate them and provide the right avenue to take care of our women and girls. May we empower each other to carry out such vision, because it isn't enough to simply talk about equality. One must believe it, see it, claim it, and live it. It simple isn't enough to believe in it. One must work at it. Let us work at it together, starting now. Today, I say welcome to today's activity, and so I want to thank our team who has traveled here. I know the hassle of traveling now in this COVID pandemic. You have to take this COVID test and do all these things, and so I want to thank you for being here in this very important celebration as Grenada just is coming out from its very first spike, where we saw how it affected many of our women and girls, many of our families, where we lost over 200 lives, where we saw women dying also. As we work together as a country, as we work together to eliminate all forms of violence against our women and girls, I call on every one of us, let us continue to soldier on together. Let us continue to work together as we strive to eliminate all forms of violence against our women and girls across the tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I know you spent the greater part of this program taking in the formalities of the evening. And I certainly hope, as you've listened to the Minister, that the hope that as we've attained this afternoon would translate itself into action on the ground, and certainly it would realize change in time to come. Empowering our women and asking of us men to understand this process of change, a change of culture, a change of thinking, a change of action, a change of habits. At this time, I want you to just relax, sit back, and as you're invited to offer a 5-minute performance, Cole Baldio, we're here to offer us a little bit of, show us what female power can all be about. And I often say to those of you men that's afraid of female power, women power, you know what? It probably just has to do with your own insecurities. So maybe the way to deal with it, build your own self-esteem and allow the virtue and values of women to take you to another place. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together as we invite Cole Baldio.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction. It's such an honor and privilege to stand here on such a transformative platform, to eliminate violence against women and girls. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cole Baltier. Put your hands together again for her, please. Continuing with this afternoon's exercise, the conversation must be that of change. But change doesn't come in a vacuum. It comes through action. It comes through education. It comes through that of what I refer to as a paradigm shift, changing of the status quo. I want to invite, for the next segment, we'll be looking at some of the pillars of change, addressing that of law, politics, access to service, and data. For this segment, prior to that, the other pillars is that of strengthened institutions, coordination, partnership, and prevention. And I want to invite Ms. Kizzy Abraham and the representatives, which represents Pillar 2 and 3, to have this conversation. Inviting to do for Pillar number 2, Lindy Richmond and Susan Fleury. Pillar 3 would be represented by Jacqueline Pascal, and Pillar 6, Cassandra Mitchell. Thank you, Kizzy. You're already here. And I now want to invite, first up, Linda Richmond and Suzanne Fleury. And again, while we wait them to make their way to the stage, we want to say thanks to all those of you that took off your busy schedule to be here, and those of you that's following us via the various social media platforms. We say thanks for allowing us to engage you on this subject.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here to speak about Pillar 2 in action in regards to the Spotlight. And I'm Susan Fleury, and we're looking at the Policy Development Coordinator and the work that we've carried out. So the work that I've carried out with the team is in regards to the draft and costing a revised GPAP, which is the Gender Equality Policy and Action Plan. We continue to advance on the drafting and costing of the revised GPAP. This intervention seeks to facilitate the creation of the National Gender Equality Commission and expand and strengthen the gender equality management system according to the GPAP. The Pillar 2 in action, the work that we've carried out so far. We've had 4 preliminary consultation discussions with government and non-governmental partners using a number of methodologies. A desk review of all documents that support the revision, reviewed the implications for the GPAP, theorising and measuring it against the standard gender equality theories.
My apologies. I would like to invite all of the persons there that was mentioned. If you can please come to the stage, and my apologies for that. I would like to invite you to have a seat, and Ms. Abraham will engage you there. So, Lindy Richmond, Susan Fleury, Jacqueline Pascal, and Cassandra Mitchell. For the purpose of continuity, once that segment is finished, we will then move on to the other individuals, Dominic Lovell, Fiona Anthony, and Helen Brazan.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies, and sorry for the confusion, but I just want to again welcome you today for coming to speak on behalf of your respective organizations or groups on the contributions that you guys have been able to make thanks to investments from the Spotlight Initiative. So I'm going to jump right in with my questions because our time is very, very limited. So first, for representing both Pillar 2, I'm going to invite both Ms. Lindy Richmond and Ms. Susan Fleury to, in a nutshell, can you tell us about the scope of the work that you're doing and how it is aligned with the mandates of the Spotlight Initiative?
Okay, as I was just discussing earlier, the work that I've been looking at is in regards to the draft and costing a revised GPAP, which is the Gender Equality Policy and Action Plan. The work is really, well, the intervention and the work seeks to facilitate the creation of the National Gender Equality Commission and expand and strengthen the gender equality management system, which is according to the GPAP. The work that we've done so far, we've held preliminary consultation discussions with government and non-governmental partners using a number of methodologies. A desk review of all documents that support the revision, reviewed the implications for the GPAP, theorising and measuring it against the standard gender equality theories. Yeah. We've also invited over 100 participants and facilitated over 10 thematic consultative workshops to facilitate the revision to address the GPAP, the gaps, in the GPAP's alignment with the identified normative frameworks and reports. We've obtained feedback through the discussions and incorporated relevant comments by stakeholders and reviewers. And at this stage now, we are ready to submit a situational analysis report on the results of the consultations and then a first draft of the revision directly shortly after that. The linkages so far with the other pillars, Pillar 1, with the gender-based violence victim survivors' rights policy, we're finalising the documents for Cabinet submission. And the other linkage is with Pillar 4 in regards to the Cabinet submission and the successful approval of the gender standard operating procedures.
Okay, that was a mouthful. And I'm thinking, just for the average person, the average woman, the average young girl who might not be able to understand all of this policy language, break it down for us a bit in the sense of what impact, when the GPAP is finalized, what impact is that going to have for gender equality in our Grenadian society?
It should mainstream gender equality throughout the Grenada community and strengthen the gender machinery.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Lindy Richmond, could you give some context to gender mainstreaming? Has your organization or group been working specifically on any gender mainstreaming projects?
Okay, so good afternoon. Pillar 2 really emphasizes strengthening of institutions and mainly through capacity building and improving of coordination and overall partnerships with all agencies that are involved in responding to violence against women and girls. To answer your question as regards to gender mainstreaming, yes. As a matter of fact, we are currently engaging in a virtual training session, which is looking at closing the gaps on gender mainstreaming. And in doing so, we have been engaging various ministries, various agencies, even the private sector, in order to encourage more institutions to integrate gender mainstreaming into their workplaces, and also to have safe spaces so that women who may be experiencing violence can have that environment where they can feel safe and also get support in dealing with the issue.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back with some more questions, but I just want to invite Cassandra, representing on Pillar 6. Can you tell us what impact Spotlight has had on the work that your organization or group is implementing at the moment?
Good afternoon. I'm representing the CSNRG here. And as you know, the Spotlight Initiative's work is rooted in research that amplifies the belief that the leadership and deep engagement of civil society is at the core of transformative and sustainable change in the elimination of violence against women and girls. So during the duration of the initiative, the Spotlight team was able to convene the Civil Society Reference Group, and we started off as a small group of 4, but very powerful people, and it's formed the governance mechanism of the Spotlight Initiative. We have grown over the years, so we have added new members to the CSNRG. And it is the hope that as CSNRG, we are going to be able to advise the Spotlight Initiative, hold them accountable for their commitments to women and girls, men and boys as well. It's important that I emphasize that there is room for men and boys under the Spotlight Initiative, and support the finalization. We're able to do a work plan within the CSNRG so that we can have some sort of governance among ourselves. So we also were able to, under Pillar 6, provide 6 small grants to civil society and women rights organizations, including grassroots organizations, most of them representing marginalized groups. One of the newest grantees under the Spotlight Initiative, the Sweetwater Foundation, they were able to scale up their telecounseling and psychotherapy support, which is important within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And they were able to provide services not just only here in Grenada but across the wider Caribbean using the grant that was provided to them. They have also recruited additional individuals who provides that bilingual support to individuals who are not English speaking, of course. And the grant was also able to cater to survivors and victims of family violence. It's a lot. Grenada as well, we were able to provide a grant under Pillar 6 to the organization, and through that they were able to do some PSAs, and the PSAs were aired over several different radio stations. Grenada was also able to do sampling and surveys of the broadcast, and to scale up the initial project and provide permanent home for also victims of family violence using accessible platforms like YouTube and other e-platforms, again, which is within the context of the COVID pandemic, given the fact that a lot of victims don't have physical access to these services. We had to be innovative in trying to provide some sort of support to victims. GrenChap was also a successful grantee under Pillar 6. They were able to do a project with support from the Spotlight Initiative that provided some sort of support for LGBTQI individuals, persons living with HIV, and people in the sex workers communities. And it's important to emphasize that a lot of the times when we have grants available, LGBTQI individuals and people living with HIV, as well as sex workers, tend to be marginalized. So through the Spotlight Initiative and GrenChap, they were able to get some support. And what they did was produce social media assets, PSAs, and IEC materials. And the whole aim of this was increasing awareness and understanding and acceptance of human diversity towards reducing family violence and gender-based violence. They also did social media events and campaigns, and based on their assessment, they were able to gather a diverse audience, and they, through their assessment as well, did come to the conclusion that the PSAs were well received. Through Pillar 6, we were also able to get consultants specialized in capacity building and assessment of civil society, understanding that the pandemic has exacerbated some of the challenges that civil society was already facing. So they did a rapid mapping and need assessment, as well as provide support to the development of critical women's rights research and knowledge products, and to implement a capacity development program which involves one-on-one coaching and peer mentorship for civil society organizations as well as their members, as well as critical field support on ongoing projects under the Spotlight Initiative. Again, I want to emphasize the role that CSNRG, civil society, have in Spotlight.
And I have a follow-up question to that, because you mentioned that you guys started off as a very small but mighty group, but you've expanded.
Yes.
Can you just tell us a bit about the representation that you guys have now with this expansion, and has that influenced the type of grassroots organizations that you see are recipients of funds?
Yes, I think the construct of the CSNRG shows that as civil society actors, we can work together. We have youth representative, we have, of course, some gender balance. We have males represented through the CSNRG. We have individuals with legal expertise, expertise dealing with children, LGBTQ, people living with HIV. So if you look at the construct of the CSNRG grouping, it shows that there is diversity. And hopefully looking on, because many times you hear that civil society can't work together, but I think the construct of the CSNRG under the Spotlight Initiative shows differently, that as civil society actors, we can and should work together to alleviate violence against women.
Thank you, Cassandra. And Laurice, I'm told that you have a presentation. So I will allow you to go ahead with the presentation before I probe you with any questions.
Give me one. All right. What? Well, I need one, everybody. I want except me. Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity. As you see on the screen, it's the first shot. We show you the different activities that Pillar 3 did over this period. And just to say that Pillar 3 focused on prevention of gender inequitable social norms, attitudes, and behaviors at community and individual level. This slide, I mentioned this slide because in last year, the International 16 Days of Activism, we engaged in, because at that time, we were in the midst of COVID, so most of the activities were around social media platforms. And we did some posters, and one of the posters was about consent. Now, to say that when we launched and put the posters on this medium, we had 53,584 persons looking at the slides, and 4,801 persons engaging on what they were seeing on the slide. One young woman from Grenada called to say that she was very pleased to see the slide on consent, because it triggered for her an incident that happened 6 months ago when she was sexually harassed by a high-placed official. She wanted at that time, now that she saw it, felt empowered to do something about it. And just to say that this young woman in 2021 today is still contacting us and finding out what she could do about sexual harassment. This one is about engaging and meeting with boys and young men in communities, one of the mandates of our pillar. And as you see there, this was a graduation ceremony, and Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell is in this photograph. Because in one of the communities, in a rural but semi-urban community, we had a session called From Boys to Men, the Journey of Manhood and Manbox. So this series was to look at the deconstruction of toxic masculinity, promote positive cultural norms, explore gendered identities and gender biases and its impact on women's access to support. So you're looking at young boys from as 12 years old to about young men to about 21 years old, and expose them to that kind of conversation. The fact that Dr. Keith Mitchell was there at that. As the minister already said, that it just speaks volumes to the commitment of Dr. Mitchell and his cabinet and the whole of government approach towards the eradication of violence against women and girls in Grenada. Just last week was International Men's Day. One of the mandate again of Pillar 3, as we have the conversation across the board of how to engage our men and boys in this conversation of eradication of violence. We had a webinar, and it was entitled, "The Man in the Mirror, Healthy Masculinity and Building Up Our Men." This was presented by Amilcar Sanatan, Youth Development and Gender Specialist. This webinar, it went digital, of course. 20,477 persons, mainly Grenadians, were engaged in this webinar. To say that we bring in the conversation in all the different forms on the eradication, we feel that is impactful. The next slide is about engaging adolescent girls and young women engagement, groups in communities. Now, leaving the pregnant adolescent girls and young women in community groups, such as Girl Guides, behind will only continue to negatively affect their health and their self-esteem. So when you have a conversation with the girls, the pregnant girls, or teenage mothers with their significant other and expectation and consent, we have a result that we are very proud of. One of the fathers came forward and said, I've been practicing on, controlling behavior with my girl. And so he reached out for help. So this is what we want to see, and this is what the Spotlight Initiative has given us the opportunity to do. To the young man who would not come forward at all, but because he was exposed to that period and that forum, he realized, based on the session that was happening, well, I have a problem here. And this is what we want to explore further. So young men will come out and help us to really help to eradicate the violence against women and girls in Grenada. So this is just a Girl Guides to show you what they're doing, and this is currently happening. So they're doing a challenge, and they're asking the community to do a video on what they think should help to eradicate violence against women and girls. So this is currently happening, so I would not speak much about it. Now, I know this looks very busy, but just to show you, just only last week, one of the conversation or the activity we're having is looking at how we could have a conversation on the reintegration of teenage mothers back into mainstream education. Now, we had this webinar workshop online, and we were able to engage the whole region in this conversation, from Jamaica right down to Grenada. So we had permanent secretaries, and our Honorable Minister Delma Thomas, who gave the keynote speak, was also present, and also other ministers of government, permanent secretaries were also present. Now the gains for this meeting, and as you see it, accepting, protecting, and fulfilling the human rights of girls subject to sexual abuse. As far as I'm concerned, all are victims of sexual abuse. They can't give consent. And so why victimize them? One of the gains and the highlights from that meeting, we had regional commitment. So all the participants from the region promised to help us with a policy that we try and develop here in Grenada. Remember that there is a policy on reintegration of young women back into the mainstream education system. One of the other commitments is the whole of government approach, which we've been talking about all the time. And the fact that we had our ministers there means that we hope when the policies come to fruition, the policies and the action, that it will be passed at the cabinet level. And then the policy and action plan development, we are so pleased that the Ministry of Education is going to be part of this conversation. We are very, very happy. And finally, under this section, where we had the workplace champions, which Ms. Lindy already spoke about, and we had that only yesterday, and this is where we're trying to move the conversation of providing safe spaces for women and girls in corporate spaces who would have been victims of domestic violence. And I think this is a great move under the Spotlight Initiative, something in my experience of working in this space for more than 25 years, I date myself now, and this is the first time I'm seeing this happening, and I think this is a great move. So the piece de la resistance, and it's right outside there, is our bus. Now this is part of what I see material where we wrap this bus to bring cogent messages in communities across, well, mainly in communities where there are high incidents of intimate partner violence and sexual abuse of our girls. And so we, as I said, members will be allowed to go and visit the bus because it's right here, and you can see what we're trying to do under the Spotlight Initiative. If you want me to pause here, there's another section because Pillar 3 is real big. And so just to finish, there's another section of Pillar 3, but many sections, of course, but this is the parenting section where we bring in the conversation in the community level, in particular rural communities, of disciplining your child, healthy relationship around that. So there's a graduation ceremony you've seen, it's not very clear, but 35% from 2 rural communities graduated, and they were very pleased. You'll hear of the voices in the field later on. And then this is a campaign which I feel is very impactful, where we wrap the back of the bus with messages on disciplining and so on. You have seen it, haven't you, around. It has been all last year, and it'll be going again for this 2021 into 2022. Last year we did 20 buses, and this year we're going to do 47 buses. So it means almost all communities in Grenada will be impacted by those messages.
It's a lot, and it speaks to the promising results that we are all seeing on the Spotlight Initiative. Before I wrap up though, because we've heard so much about what all of these pillars are achieving in the moment, and I know myself, and I'm sure the audience is wondering, sustainability. What efforts, if any, have been considered? Because we know Spotlight is just a project. It's not here to hold our hand throughout this entire process till we get to the other side. But it has given us enough opportunities to build partnerships, to get the groundwork started. So in terms of sustainability, Ms. Fleury, can you just tell us what support would be needed to ensure that GPAP is able to achieve its set outcome?
In regards to sustainability, I think the establishment of the National Gender Equality Commission would actually help in sustainability. Once the commission is established and in place, it would definitely strengthen that and create a sense of ownership, to strengthen the Interministerial Council of Gender Focal Points and so forth, and allow gender mainstreaming throughout different government bodies and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Richmond, do you want to add anything to that?
One of the activities that would have taken place under Pillar 2, which I think would definitely contribute to sustainability, is that of the piloting of a GBV 101 module, which over 6 local institutions have already indicated that they are ready to implement in their institutions. And we would have engaged in piloting this module. We would have engaged current trainees, and all of these trainees are youth. And it was interesting that these young people, they expressed such appreciation for the training session that they were engaged in. And I think that if these young persons, they continue to lend their voice to the issue, it would certainly lend to the sustainability of efforts under the Spotlight Initiative.
And Ms. Mitchell, you spoke very highly of CSO's capacity to work together, but in terms of sustainability, how would all of this collaboration be solidified so that moving forward, there's continued partnership?
And that's the word, partnership. Over the last year and some, civil society, we have realized, we have discussed some of our challenges or weak points or strengths. And I think coming out of the Spotlight Initiative, that is what we need to do, focus on partnership and collaboration, sharing resources and information so that we can be more impactful on the ground and that we can continue to help victims of domestic violence. So the key word is partnership.
Okay, so I told that we are out of time, so I want to thank everyone on the panel. Unless you had any last comments that you wanted to share, please feel free to go ahead.
Not necessarily a comment, but there are a number of activities on the Pillar 2 which I didn't get the chance to mention, but we do have a video which I would like for us to share just to highlight those activities, please.
Yes, we can.
And we also have voices in the field. When I mentioned about the buses, the bus wrap, we have a bus owner giving his testimony, and we also have with the parenting graduation, a participant giving his testimony as well.
Facilitator Dr. Lorraine Orlando said at the end of the training, the participants will be better equipped to deal with individuals affected by violence.
Right now it's a pilot project, it's a 2-day project. This could be definitely expanded into, the topics could be so immense that it could be a whole semester long. But because of our need to see what the existing knowledge is, as well as to ensure that we are not making any assumptions of persons' experience and knowledge with the topics. So some of those topics would be the prevalence of GBV in Grenada and the Caribbean region itself, root causes of GBV, stigma, discrimination, and help seeking, challenges and gaps, roles, responsibilities of the different sectors that are involved in GBV, as well as adverse childhood experiences, social ecological model, and really these are the components, but we really try to make it as interactive and as engaging as possible because that's how we learn. We learn through practice. So the GBV 101 training, even though there is theory, it learns through activities.
GIS spoke to a few participants who are excited to impart their newfound knowledge to persons they come in contact with.
It will give us the opportunity in our medical careers to deal with such situations. Oftentimes we overlook it because, this problem starts deep within our society. And I think a training like this, it starts with me, it starts with my colleagues. Each and every one of us could spread not what we learned in the training to help Grenada as a country.
It will help me going forward to better educate my colleagues as to signs to look for in victims that would have been possibly affected by violence at the home level, domestic level, sexually abused patients, the signs to look for, the things to look for, and we'll be better able to give them advice going forward and to treat them, knowing who to go to and where can we report such matters going forward.
This program has been very informative, and it will take my colleagues and I to another level because it was like something new.
Okay.
I think it's a good initiative. It's a stand that a lot of people, especially men, take in terms of child abuse and all those sort of different things. I think it sends us a good message to parenting on a whole, as the way people approach certain situations in terms of their children. Yeah, I'm actually a dad of two. I have a boy and a girl. Two wonderful children, and I think like it's different because I used to look at different things like how my parents actually grew us up, and as time goes on I try to implement certain things that my parents instilled in me, but I realized that time changed and back then is back then. I'm not saying that you can't use certain things that what your parents teach you back then, but we had to kind of go with the tide. Because back then we didn't have WhatsApp and Facebook and all those other things. So now we had to kind of work with them and try to be on a level with them. That's how I see it. So, but it helped me be a better father to my children. Because I look at things different. It should be. It should make a big difference and not only Grenada but worldwide, but for Grenada's sake, it should be. The message is powerful, and especially for men, it should be a foot or a pillar that guys or fathers should take in terms of looking after their kids or their child, just being this father figure. So I think the message should be something that is planted and something that is grounded and powerful for men in general. Pick up a phone and call if you see something happening. Be that, I don't want to say that hero, but be that person that stands for something like that, what is right. Stands that you stand against violence for women and kids. Be that person that you know in your heart you definitely love, because as you being a father for yourself and you seeing your child go through certain things, you will get upset and want to deal with somebody who take the next step to make sure that your child never experience that kind of level. So you will definitely see your next child going through that, and you should just take the same stand that you see for your kids, take it for somebody else. Actually, two persons actually came to me and asked me what's that on the back of the bus. We spoke about it, and then while speaking about it, one of the guys said to me, "Say, you know what? That makes me look at things on a different level, because it goes back to how your parents grows you up, and now that something like this is actually out there, you look at things different. So certain situations, like for me, I would handle it back then different, but seeing the message and seeing what is actually out there on the buses is actually something that I stand for and would definitely take a different approach. And as people the two person that came to me and said, you know what, I'm definitely going to be taking a different approach to how I go to talk to my children or to approach them in certain situations, certain things that they do, I would definitely have a different mindset or a different frame of mind in how I handle it.
Yes, I would definitely say that. And I'm saying it now. It has definitely increased my knowledge and my awareness concerning family violence and child sexual abuse prevention. Well, most certainly in Grenadian society, it's quite obvious, but it's not really. And what I mean by that is that it's subtle. Now, as Grenadians, we have a sort of culture of threats and what we call old talk. And that manifests in what parents would say, I will beat you, I will mash you up. But that influences the children to be open to violence, and often it manifests in physical abuse and verbal abuse. And when it comes to child sexual abuse, well, it's kind of like the elephant in the room. It happens, people know about it, but it's not reported. So what I would definitely say is that it's quite prevalent in our communities. It happens in our homes. We know it's happening, but we don't talk about it. And that is the thing that I would like people to know about family violence and child sexual abuse. Without reservation, yes. I think from any perspective, every single person should join this session. As a matter of fact, I think it should be inculcated into the curriculum in schools. I think it should be in primary school, in preschool, in secondary school, and obviously in tertiary education institutions. I think this is so integral, so important, so significant that it must absolutely be something that every Grenadian should know. I think everyone should join this parenting session, and especially people from ages, say, 16 upwards. Well, firstly, I think what I'm doing here is an action that I'm taking against child sexual abuse, violence against women, sexual abuse against women and girls. I think sensitizing the public, letting people know that we are here, we are aware, and we know it's happening. Appealing to the public to report it, to be aware of it. Don't stand and watch your children, your neighbors, your family suffer. And I think something else that I would definitely do is advocate. That's what I have been doing, even if it's something as close or in my circles like a WhatsApp post. I think people need to be sensitized. They need to be aware that this thing is an evil, it's wickedness, and we must advocate against it, and we must stand in solidarity with the people who are victims of abuse, sexual abuse, especially women and young girls.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us, Lindy. I want to thank everyone on the panel. Oh, sorry, Loris. Thank you, Loris. I want to thank everyone for committing to presenting the results on your respective pillars under the Spotlight Initiative. And I want to commend you all for the transformative impact you guys are having in your respective spaces. So on behalf of Spotlight, thank you.
Quite a bit to digest and to assimilate there. We do have another segment that would be coordinated by Mr. David Andrew and representatives of Pillar 1, 4, and 5. But before we get into that segment, we do have a presentation on PAN that will be done by Ms. Anisha Howard Johnson. And we certainly do want to indicate that Ms. Johnson, she does not claim any rights or responsibilities to the music that she would be rendering, but in fact, it is just for the purpose of entertainment. For the next, while we wait on Ms. Johnson, the next pillars, the next segment would be facilitated by Mr. David Andrew, and the representatives would be Donique Dovell, Fiona Anthony, and Helen Brazan. Thank you, Ms. Anisha Howard-Johnson. To take us through this next segment, where we look at the pillars, that of law, politics, and access to service and data, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Andrew will facilitate this segment, and the representatives will be Fiona Anthony, Helen Brazan, and Donique Lovell. Mr. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremony. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and good evening to you on this segment of the panel. Let me welcome all of you to, as we talk, the achievements of the Spotlight Initiative in relation to the 3 pillars we are going to discuss. We acknowledge you, Mr. Halim Brizan, Chief Statistician in the Ministry of Finance, and we recognize Ms. Fiona Anthony, the Country Program Specialist with PAHO. We also have joining us virtually the Queen's Counsel, Ms. Dominique Lovell in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and welcome all of you. And in fact, let me say that violence against anyone is a travesty. And today we join the Spotlight Initiative and we join all of their partners to talk about violence against women and girls and the initiatives and the successes they have achieved under the various pillars. But let me just pause, and as a male, as a man, as a father, as a husband, I want to take the time to apologize to every woman who has ever been the victim of any form of violence, every woman, any girl. And I want to make that apology as a man, because the research indicates that men are among the leading perpetrators of this act of violence. So let me go firstly to our Queen's Counsel, Ms. Dominique Lovell. She's joining us virtually. And let me ask, tell us in a nutshell. Now, the Pillar 3, or Pillar 1, beg your pardon, talks about laws and policies. And when we begin to contemplate domestic violence and violence against women and girls, we can go as far back as the laws and the policies governing what happens, and to the services available and how accessible they are, and then to the data that informs all of this planning. So let's start with the laws and the policies, and here's where our Queen's Counsel, Ms. Dominique Lovell, let's hear from you. What has happened? What are the achievements under the Spotlight Initiative that you can briefly report to us on?
Pleasant good afternoon to everyone here. Thank you for having me. As I was introduced as Dominique Lovell, Crown Counsel for the Ministry of Legal Affairs. So thus far, in looking at the Spotlight Initiative, we have developed position papers which examine various areas that may be impacted, various laws may be impacted by the subject areas, and various regional and international best practices, as well as a review of treaties related to the subject area being gender-based violence, to see how best we can serve in eliminating gender-based violence. So we spoke about the family law, child protection reform. We went on to look at the sexual offenses reform. And then we went on to look at domestic violence reform, family law reform, and recommendation for victim rights reform. So those are the large areas that we looked at. And then we sought to create drafts of legislation that we are going to seek to implement that will address changes that can positively impact and favor women and children. And there's also an aspect of public education that we're dealing with, as well as the family court component. So that's a very broad look at the work that we've been doing. If given the opportunity later, I can go into more detail about, there's some examples of like the laws that we're looking at, how these will be reformed and changed and re-examined to better address a number of issues that we see arising in this society.
So thank you very much for that brief summary of the things that you're undertaking. But I have one quick question though. Tell me, how far gone are those, you talked about reforms, legal reforms, the family court, how far gone are some of those reforms that you're talking about? At what stage in the process are they at? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so we have drafted a number of the same bills that I've mentioned as it relates to the family law reform. We've looked at the primary legislation, for example, such as maintenance of children, status of children, education amendment bill, marriage amendment bill, and then we've also looked at subsidiary legislation under that heading, marriage special licenses, amendment and marriage special licenses, destination wedding amendment regulations. And likewise, the other areas that we've spoken of, sexual offenses reform, we have a criminal code amendment bill and an employment amendment bill. In relation to domestic violence reform, we have a domestic violence amendment bill. And in relation to victim rights reform, we have a national sex offenders registry bill, a criminal procedure code amendment bill, a criminal procedure preliminary inquiries amendment bill. And a subsidiary legislation, we have protection of witnesses ordered. And we also have a few under family law as well, which would be the cohabitational relationships bill, the intestate estates amendment bill, and the national insurance amendment bill. So as you can see, we have gone quite far in extending our efforts to seeing these bills come to light. They're all dated 2021, and we look for them to be passed soon. And we also have upcoming meetings with stakeholders as soon as next week. So we've been actively working on implementing these new measures.
Well, thank you very much. So we might just get back to you in a little bit closer to the end. Thank you for informing us. Now, we want to talk a little bit about the services, the access there is to service in relation to persons affected, women and girls affected by gender-based violence. So we're going to talk with Ms. Fiona Anthony, but before we have a chat with her, there's a video lined up, and we'll be happy to have the video played, and then we chat with her a little bit.
Thank you very much. I will just do a quick introduction just to mention that I'm here on behalf of the full team for Pillar 4. And as mentioned, Pillar 4 focuses on improving services for women and girls who've experienced violence. The pillar is led by PAHO WHO and also UNFPA. I just want to mention some of our partners with respect to the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, the Ministry of Health and Social Security, the Special Victims Unit of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and also the justice sector, and of course our civil society organizations as well. So these are just some of the achievements that we've achieved so far. There are many more that are ongoing at the moment, which we will hope to highlight later on from our other partners as well. So we hope you enjoy, and I'm happy to answer questions on it afterwards. Thank you.
Violence against women and girls is the most widespread form of abuse worldwide. It leaves lifelong negative impacts on their health, peace, and stability. To provide support for these survivors, the Spotlight Initiative was launched in 2020 in Grenada under a 6-pillar framework. Pillar 4 focuses on improving the delivery of essential services to survivors of family violence. This is being done by scaling up social services, counseling, psychosocial support, and long-term safety net programs for survivors. Now, much has been achieved under Pillar 4 of the Spotlight Initiative. We have focused our attention on scaling up of the services provided by all of the sectors involved in response to gender-based violence. And some of the activities conducted have been retrofitting of spaces as well as training of staff in case management and crisis management. But one of the most important achievements under Pillar 4 thus far has been the development of the National Standard Operating Procedure for Gender-Based Violence for Grenada. We are extremely happy about this. And the intention of the Standard Operating Procedure is to guide all the sectors involved, that being social, health, police, and the justice sector, to provide quality, coordinated, comprehensive, client-centered, efficient, effective, and non-discriminatory response to gender-based violence.
Under Pillar 4 of the Spotlight Initiative, Sweetwater Foundation was mandated to provide psychosocial counseling to, I think, 120 women and girls who have been affected by domestic violence or sexual violence, particularly within the context of the COVID lockdown. But we quickly realized that we need to service families, the children of these women, and the parents sometimes of our victims. So we ended up, instead of, say, 100 clients, Sweetwater Foundation found the time to work with over 500 of them because we thought it was irresponsible to just stop short at the mark, but try to deliver a very fulsome service. And at that, we've had a wonderful success.
One of the main achievements as Cedars Home through Spotlight has been the creation of an isolation room, which have benefited all the residents in preventing the spread of COVID-19, and also with the installation of sanitation stations throughout the facility. That has been the key achievement for the Spotlight in this moment when the COVID-19 virus is very present in our community.
My name is Anya Braffett, and I'm the facilitator for the Spotlight Women's Entrepreneurship Program. It's a small component of the project, but a very important component, because what it aims to do is to empower and provide these women with business and soft skills, which can help them to develop an independence, a self-confidence, and a self-esteem. They understand the environment, they know where they can go to get help and assistance, and we've been through a lot of detail just to ensure that they really are feeling a lot more confident about setting up a business. You can see the improvement in the women, and I'm very proud as a Grenadian facilitator to be a part of this project, helping to push the developmental aspect of our women, push that agenda much further than it is at this point.
Indeed, we recognize that there's been quite a spread of services, and that spread no doubt allows for quite a bit of access and makes it quite a lot more accessible, and we're happy about that. I have two questions. Tell me, you talked in the video talked about having the national standard operating procedure for treating with victims of domestic violence. Tell me, or gender-based violence, what has the reception to that been like across the various agencies? You talked about the police, and you talked about, I expect, in schools and child protection and all these agencies, they'd have to respond to those agents, to that protocol. that standard operating procedure. What's been the response like to that?
The response has been positive to try to formulate a coordinated response to gender-based violence. The response was there before, but I think the organisations feel that through the standard operating procedures, everybody is aware of what needs to be done at what point, and everybody has the same information to follow. So it should be that any woman or any girl presenting at any point, whether it be to the police, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Social Development, they should then follow the same procedures. So we have a referral mechanism and pathway within the standard operating procedures, which means that every woman and girl should access the same services no matter what point they enter the system.
Yeah, and I could see that making access a whole lot more reliable for the victims of that. The other question is, sitting from your position as country manager for PAHO here, how does Grenada rank relative to country compatriots around the region in relation to gender-based violence and our response to services?
I may be corrected, but I think Grenada's impetus towards wanting to make the change to improve the services for women and girls towards gender-based violence was one of the reasons why it was selected as one of the beneficiaries of the Spotlight Initiative through the EU. So with the improvements and the measures put in place already towards reducing gender-based violence at the legislative and policy level, great work had already taken place. So therefore then it was one of the reasons why the funding was received, and then to build upon that work, that groundwork that had already been done.
Thank you. Hopefully Grenada can keep building in that vein. Now let's move to Mr. Brizan. Now you sit as the chief statistician in the Ministry of Finance, and sometimes people wonder, what does that have to do with gender-based violence? But I suspect your office is the one that will provide the data and all of the information statistically that would inform policy makers. Tell us, what has happened in your department in relation to the Spotlight Initiative and the successes you can report briefly?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm responsible for Pillar 5. I'm the pillar lead, and the outcome of this pillar is for quality, disaggregated, and globally comparable data on violence against women and girls related to family violence, with a focus on intimate partner violence and child sexual abuse, be collected, analyzed, and used in line with international standards to inform laws, policies, and programs. International standards is important to maintain for international comparability. And we have two main outcomes. 5.1, that key partners, including relevant statistical officers, service providers in the different branches of government, and women rights advocates have strengthened the capacity. So these stakeholders have strengthened capacities to regularly collect data on violence against women and girls related to family violence in line with those international and regional standards, which would basically inform laws, policies, and programs. And the other important output is for quality prevalence and or incidence data on violence against women and girls be analyzed and made publicly available for the monitoring and reporting of the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal Indicator 5.2, target, to basically to inform evidence-based decision-making. Now, in terms of the work done under this pillar, and in terms of the output 5.1, I could report that we have already completed one of two major consultancies of the project, which is to build the technical capacity to improve data collection and analysis on violence against women and girls within key stakeholders in Grenada. And in this regard, a consultant conducted a baseline assessment, which included a capacity gap analysis of government's quantitative data collection and management systems. Meetings were held with various stakeholders, including my office, the Central Statistical Office, the Ministry of Social Development, the Royal Grenada Police Force, also the carriacou team to see what synergies could be built. And the carriacou team is at the UNDP. And from those consultations, an inception report was delivered where the findings from the assessment were presented, including the way forward, which informed the training and the capacity building efforts. So a training seminar was then tailored based on those findings, and the consultant delivered this training to a number of stakeholders, and this training sought to build technical capacity to improve data collection and analysis on violence against women and girls data. Now, the assessment report also recommended the need to furnish the Royal Grenada Police Force, the Ministry of Social Development, and the Central Statistical Office with equipment and software to be able to realize the objectives under this pillar, which is basically the data production objective. Hence, we were able to procure, with the help of the UNDP, statistical software, which we already have, and also computer equipment and accessories, which is currently being shipped to Grenada. And so under this same output, we do have a second consultancy, which we are just embarking upon. And this consultancy, qualified and highly experienced individual was recruited and hired to build an integrated monitoring system on violence against women and girls in Grenada, and in collaboration with our office and also the members of the pillar, the various stakeholders of the pillar. Okay. Now, the system that will be built under this consultancy, so we're just in the process of starting it, is a web-based application that will collect, monitor, and generate report on violence against women and girls and family violence in Grenada, which will allow for data analysis and data dissemination. We already had 2 meetings in this regard with the consultant. One was an introductory meeting with the pillar lead, and the other a meeting with the pillar team members where the consultant presented his initial proposal and members gave feedback. So the intention is to have weekly meetings, and there would be some element of training because we want to ensure sustainability and that our officers can operate the system being developed. Now, I made reference to output 5.2, which speaks to the dissemination and the analysis of the data. So you would appreciate that this output is dependent on the work in 5.1, how fast we build and develop this system. But I must say that there is data available on violence against women because our office took the initiative to, well, in collaboration with UN Women and the CDB, to undertake a women's health and life experiences survey in 2018. And as a result of us doing this survey, we're able to be beneficiaries of the Spotlight Initiative. And I'm just saying that for persons to understand the strength in data and how powerful it is in terms of effecting change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Brizan. And listen, hadn't we been out of time, I'd probably want to probe on a couple of things that you mentioned, but I can't help noticing your reference to having international compatibility in your data. So when Grenada speaks of the percentage of violence or the degree of violence per capita, it can be compared across the region, across the world, and that is pretty significant. And even the issue of having the capacity gap analysis done, I think that's significant as well, so that you can be able to bridge whatever gaps and plug gaps in the system. And you talked about the development of that system for real-time data. I don't think that's how you said it, but I captured it like that, having real-time data in terms of domestic violence, and that's important as well, and other developments. So, so gentlemen and ladies, Queen's Counsel, I hope you're still with us. Here's my final question to you. What's next? As we wrap, as you make your final comments, tell me what we can look forward to. What's next from the legal and policy pillar? What's next from the access to service pillar? What next from the data pillar as you make your final comments? So, Queen's Counsel, Lovell?
Well, as I said before, in relation to the legislation that we've drafted, thus far we've drafted at least 17 pieces of legislation, inclusive of the substantive bills and various amendments and subsidiary legislation. So that would be, in essence, what's next, seeing those bills passed and implemented, and the impact that would really have on eliminating gender-based violence would be tremendous. So we're really looking forward to those positive changes being reflected in society. We've also been in consultations with the OECS Supreme Court as it relates to family court. And we've collected and reviewed various studies previously done by these family courts. So we're also hoping to see this implemented here as well. And we're just going to just generally create a roadmap so that we can see where Grenada is going legally and from a policy framework in relation to this subject area.
So let me thank you for all the work you have been doing and will continue to do in the legal framework in relation to Pillar 1. Fiona?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So there's lots of activities coming up. So actually next week we start our medical legal training, and this is for health workers and first responders with respect to the processes and procedures with collecting evidence and how that evidence is handled in instances of violence, particularly sexual violence. We also have, within the Ministry of Social Development, we're working on a resource mobilization plan. So with respect to sustainability for Cedars Home, we're working on a plan so that there's an action plan with respect to how to continue to mobilize resources to continue operating the shelter to the high level that they are doing at the moment. Under Justice, we're retrofitting a room within the court to provide the facility for teleconferencing, so victims don't have to face their perpetrator in person. And under our police sector as well, we're doing retrofitting of rooms to allow for more privacy, etc., for victims when they do come into the police services. And obviously, of course, we're continuing with our civil society organizations with the programs and plans that you would have seen highlighted in the video. So we have a lot of work still to do, but it's going well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the work you've done and you continue to do in support of Pillar 4. Mr. Brizan, what's next?
Yes, so what's next for this pillar is that we continue to look forward to building a robust monitoring system so that we can effectively and collect the information needed in a timely manner, right? It is also important, and we look forward at the end of the process that we have persons who are trained and can operate the system being developed, and also persons who are able to analyze, and not just analyze, but interpret the data so that policymakers can be informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me thank all of you panelists, Dominic Lavelle, Fiona Anthony, and Halim Brizan. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking with them. Let me encourage each one of you to join us as we join the fight with all our partners internationally and our local Spotlight Initiative and everyone else, as we join the fight to stop violence, gender-based violence, and violence, period, in our society. Have a wonderful afternoon. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to our facilitator, Mr. David Andrew, and the representatives that participated, Fiona Anthony, Halim Brizan, and Dominic Lavelle. Time is well spent, but certainly we have to continue. But we're nearing the end of the road, though, folks, and you have been a good audience thus far. Allow me to introduce, just to put into context everything that has taken place here today, Ms. Elaine Henry McQueen, and she's the Grenada Spotlight Initiative Program Coordinator. Ladies and gentlemen, Elaine Henry McQueen. Thereafter, just for your own interest, would be the vote of thanks. That should probably put a smile on your face. But first, Ms. McQueen.
Madam Ambassador, Madam Permanent Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is certainly a pleasure to come at this point, having heard so much that gives me great joy about the successes and the progress that has been made towards ending violence against women and girls in Grenada through the Spotlight Initiative. This program has come at a point where Grenada had been making progress through legislation and through certain programs, and so it helps Grenada to build on them. You would have heard of the outcomes that have been coming through. There has been laws and policies that are being reformed. Institutions are being strengthened, social norms are changing, women and girls who experience violence have increased access to services, preparations are being made for for monitoring system, and civil society organizations will be better able to influence, sustain, and advance progress on gender equality and women's empowerment, and also on violence against women and girls. These, of course, means that a very robust system of governance and accountability and partnership has to be built. You would have seen partners from so many different fields speaking about how they have contributed, and so the coordination of that was very, very important. I want to draw attention to a specific innovation that was instituted under the Grenada Spotlight Initiative, and we do believe that it has helped to facilitate that kind of collaboration and partnership that was required. And that had to do with and that's the joint pillar teams. Now, the government of Grenada recognized the importance of having the Spotlight Initiative. The government had already identified through the medium-term agenda that ending violence against women and girls was one of the national strategy, one of the national priorities. And so the cabinet identified pillar leads within Grenada to work alongside the United Nations partners in the work to be done in Grenada. And so the idea of the Joint Pillar team started right then, because the UN agency technical lead and the Pillar lead for Grenada was able to work together. And then they built with them a team of persons from different stakeholders to collaborate with as the partners for the Pillar. And each of those Pillar teams include persons from government, persons from civil society and the Civil Society National Reference Group, as well as persons from the United Nations entities. And by working together, we've seen that these are bearing fruit. Of course, there are challenges with that because collaborations mean sometimes pacing action to match each other's, times for meetings, a lot of discussions, and sometimes, of course, it can feel a bit overwhelming. But I am happy to say that the evidence is clear that working together works wonders. I also want to draw to our attention that these are being done. That is the work through all of the pillars and in the structures for collaboration. All of that is being done through in applying the principles, some core principles of the Grenada Spotlight Initiative and indeed of the Global Spotlight Initiative. And those that are most visible are national capacity and ownership, the central role of civil society, a comprehensive approach to programming for ending violence against women and girls, applying the principles of the Sustainable Development Goals, and the key ones here are the human rights approach, leaving no one behind, and universality, and UN system reform. These are all being applied throughout all of the work that you've heard discussed here. And of course, they are also contributing to the quality of the results that you would have heard expressed. Through the Spotlight Initiative, government and civil society partners in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique are facilitated to take comprehensive action to end violence against women and girls, in keeping with their commitments to the population and in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goals 5 and 16. The promise of Spotlight has started to be manifest, but Spotlight continues. And we hope that it will continue towards bringing greater achievements for the women and girls in Grenada. The aim is that women and girls will be free from violence and harmful practices. We are speaking here of all women and girls without regard to any distinctions, any differences among us. The contribution from and collaboration among the European Union, the United Nations, the government, the civil society, and all other partners will be the mechanism for this promise to become a reality. Let us move quickly as we are, and even hasten our steps to move from words and commitment to action, action that yields further results, so that we can truly end violence against women and girls now. We can end violence against women and girls throughout every household, in every community, in our Tri-Island state, so that we can end violence now. And that by doing so in Grenada, we are contributing to that global ambition to end violence against women now. I say thank you to all of you who have worked so diligently to achieve those results that we're celebrating today. I thank all of the members of the program implementation Coordination and Implementation Unit, the team I am part of. I thank all of the UN partners and the EU for helping to make this a reality at this point. Of course, there had been some jitters, and this is not the vote of thanks, but I must say as the program coordinator, there was some jitters about how are we presenting so much results, so many results within this short space of time. And we are here, and I thank you as well for, bringing them out, because we feel with you the results. And it is very heartening to be in a program that is yielding such marvelous results. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elaine Henry McQueen, the Grenada Spotlight Initiative Program Coordinator. You've been a rather astute audience, and certainly those of you that is on the online platforms. We're literally to the end of the program, but before we do that, it would be remiss of us if we do not offer a vote of thanks to say thank you for those of you who've made this initiative what it is, the success that it has been, it is today, and will continue to be. To offer the vote of thanks, I now call on Anika Davis, and she is the Spotlight Initiative Communication Consultant.
A lovely and warm good afternoon to our most worthy guests, participants, colleagues, and viewers. I feel honored to offer this vote of thanks on behalf of the Program Coordination and Implementation Unit for the Grenada Spotlight Initiative to acknowledge the contribution of those who worked hard to make today's event a success. I'll start by saying thanks to Almighty God. By His blessings and grace, today's event was a grand success. I offer sincere thanks to the speakers today, Resident Coordinator Didier Trebek, Her Excellency Malgorzata Wasilewska, as well as Honorable Minister Delma Thomas, for their graceful and passionate words that enforced the significance of today, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and the beginning of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. To our specially invited guests, your presence here today speaks your commitment in solidarity to what today signifies, and we thank you. We say a special thank you to the participants who have been working diligently to deliver results to promote gender equality in homes, communities, schools, workplaces, and throughout our society. I take this time to offer our gratitude to the Planning Committee for all your contribution. You have made today possible. To our entertainment and service providers who have made special efforts and contribution towards today's event, we express our appreciation. I leave you now with the words of Ban Ki-moon. Achieving gender equality requires the engagement of women and men, girls and boys. It is everyone's responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika, the Communication Consultant with the Spotlight Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, this vote of thanks brings the curtains down on this evening's exercise. We've gone through the formality, the speeches, and the presentation. 16 days of activism, 16 days that allow us to consider who we are, where we are, and where we go from here as a people. But certainly, you've been a delightful audience. But before we leave, I say thanks again. And I'll leave you with the wonderful and the scintillating voice of Cole Baldio, who will come to offer some entertainment. Again, all the best for those of you in social media. Thanks for being part of this engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure being here with you. Cole Baldio.
Thank you. Once again, it is my pleasure to be here and to close the show. This was a very spectacular event, and I think is the one that I've never been a part of before, so it's really, really nice to be here this evening. And so we're gonna close with a couple songs that hopefully will help empower anyone who has survived violence. Are you ready, Kamel? On keyboards this evening, I have Kamel with me, and we're gonna end this show today. Can I get some volume on the music, please? Now that you're out of my life, I'm so much better. You thought that I'd be weak without you, but I'm stronger. You thought that I'd be broke without you, but I'm richer. You thought that I'd be sad without you, I laugh harder. You thought that I won't grow without you, but I'm wiser. Thought that I'd be helpless without you, but I'm smarter. You thought that I'd be sad without you, but thought I wouldn't sell without you. So 9 million, I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving. Thought I couldn't breathe without you, I'm inhaling. You thought I couldn't see without your perfect vision. You thought I couldn't last without you, but I'm lasting. You thought I wouldn't grow without you, but I'm growing. You thought I would fail without you, but I'm on top. Thought I wouldn't be here right now, but it won't stop. Thought that I would self-destruct, but I'm still here. Even in my years to come, I'm still gonna be here. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I will survive, keep on surviving. Wishing you the best, pray that you are blessed. Much success, no stress, and lots of happiness. I'm better than that, I'm not gonna blast you on the radio. I'm better than that, I'm not gonna lie on you and your family. Oh, I'm better than that, I'm not gonna hate on you in the magazines. I'm better than that, I'm not compromise my Christianity. I'm better than that, I'm not gonna diss you on the internet, cause my mama taught me better than that. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I'm gonna work hard, I will survive. Oh, 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 oh. Soon comes happiness. If I surround myself with positive things, I'll gain prosperity. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop. breath, keep on surviving. Thank you. So I have one more song to do. And once again, thank you so much for the opportunity for being here with you guys. This was very special. I used to bite my tongue and hold my breath, scared to rock the boat and make a mess. I stood politely, agreed politely. I guess that I forgot I had a choice. Let you push me past the breaking point. I stood for nothing, so I fell for everything. You held me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear this sound, you hear my voice, like thunder about to shake the ground. You held me down, but I got up. Get ready, cause I had enough. You see it all, I see it now. I got the eye of a tiger, a fighter, dancing through the fire. Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion. Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Now I'm floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. I've earned my stripes. I went from zero to my own hero. You let me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear this sound, you hear this voice, like thunder about to shake the ground. You held me down, but I got up. Get ready, cause I had enough. I see it all, I see it now. I got the eye of a tiger, a fighter, dancing through the fire. Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion. Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. You're gonna hear me I got the eye of a tiger, the fighter, dancing through the fire. Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion. Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. You're gonna hear me roar. Hey, hey. Oh, you're gonna hear me roar. And you're gonna hear me roar. Thank you.